A host of the only show centered around you, the listener. Welcome to the Ask Noah Show. My name is Noah Chalaya. So, on our online forums, that's reddit.com/r/Ask Noah Show. I think asknoahshow.reddit.com works too. I have gone through the Reddit, I've gone through the YouTube comments, emails, they all seem to be hovering around one thing lately. Now, I've been pretty straightforward with you guys since day one. You, the listener, are in control of the content. It's such a core belief to me. It's such a founding belief of this show that it's been forever baked into the intro. Because, well, once you do an intro, then you can never change it. That's one of the unwritten rules of broadcasting. But what you guys talk about with me on Telegram chat, on the online forums, even in the comments in YouTube, that's what I use to write the next show. Noah, what does any of this have to do with today's show? Everything. It has everything to do with today's show because my gut tells me that we have been too heavy in the server arena lately and that we need to get back to more basic concepts, more desktop stuff, more Linux desktop. And if I were planning the show by myself, if I were going just by what I wanted to talk about here, that's what we'd be talking about today. Because I enjoy the Linux desktop. I enjoy talking about the Linux desktop. I enjoy talking to home users. I even enjoy helping home users. I don't necessarily like working inside of homes. I certainly don't like running Cat5 cable. And as a little aside, I'll tell you why. In a business environment, when you're making a network drop and you've got a ceiling that's maybe, 10 feet or something, you just tell the business owner, I'm going to cut a little hole up here. I'm going to fish the wire down. Then I'm going to cut a hole at the bottom and I'll pull it through and I'll put caps on the holes. Most businesses, sure, no problem. Just cap it up when you're done. Home users, you're gonna cut a hole in my wall? And I lived that last week, let me tell you. But if I were planning a show by myself, that's what we'd be talking about. We'd be talking about the Linux desktop. And I enjoy learning about the Linux desktop. I enjoy when I do a show and it teaches me something. When I did the C-file segment, I learned a lot about file syncing. I learned how data is encrypted and then sent, and I learned about the file process, and subsequently, I improved not only my personal life, but I was able to improve the lives of everyone that works for me at Altispeed. So I particularly enjoy when I'm able to talk about something that I then can implement. And I know that we all like to dream about these businesses, and in these imaginary businesses, they all have Gwake running in the drop-down terminal. They have the best GNOME extensions. They have the best GNOME themes. Their users, they sit around at night, around a campfire, drinking beer, and they talk about how great their computer at work is because they have the dash-to-dock extension or the ping indicator and how much better it is than everywhere else. But the truth is, we all know this if we're honest with ourselves. In the business world, the vast majority of people that are using Linux on desktops, it's just the base OS. And maybe a few pieces of requisite software that they need to get their job done. Because the reality is, aside from purpose-built software, the majority of the work being done on the computer system, regardless of operating system, is office work. It's document editing, it's spreadsheets, and it's email. The majority of the really cool tweaking actually occurs on the server, happens on the back end. Now, the last 2 weeks have been pretty server intensive, and so my inclination was to go back to my beloved Linux desktop this week. But you, the listener, have spoke up. You guys have asked this question over and over and over again, and so today we are going to dive into this. And that question is, how do we at Altispeed Technologies implement Linux computers to function as Windows computers, or would function as Windows computers on an Active Directory system? How do we manage that? Well, obviously, a cutting-edge company like Altispeed Technologies is not going to have templated solutions. We don't just have one solution that we open up and bake in for everyone. We look at every client's individual needs. We sit down with them. We meet with them. We evaluate where we are going to have perceived pain points. And then, and only then, do we pair them with an open source solution that provides them with cost savings without sacrificing quality. So let's dig into this a little bit. Let's start with worst case scenario. You have an all Windows shop. and they're using all Windows computers. The servers are Windows, the desktops are Windows, everything is Windows. What would we do? Well, the first step is obviously to have a meeting in which we let the client know that they're crazy. No, I'm just kidding. We sit down, we have a meeting with the client, and in no uncertain terms, we tell them that as their chosen IT provider, in order to efficiently provide them with the best IT service, we're going to have to make some infrastructure changes. You want to talk about this kind of stuff ahead of time. Do not take the rest of this episode and go throwing these solutions into production without talking to whoever it is you're working for, or you're likely to wind up out of a job. Most places are fairly tolerant of infrastructure changes, particularly if you can make a case that it's going to affect their bottom line. It's going to save them money. And in this case, I can almost assure you that it will. Once we've talked to the client and we have advised them that this is what we're going to do, then the next thing that we are going to do is look at what we are going to fix first. Well, the first thing that we look at is workstations crash. They get reimaged, and it's rarely a huge deal. Most people, most businesses, are pretty tolerant of the fact that their workstations go down from time to time. So if we're going to swap something out, we'll do the workstation is not necessarily where we want to start. We don't want to swap the workstation out. We'll start with the most critical piece of infrastructure, because that's always a great idea, which is the domain controller. And I joke, but the reason that we always start with, if I had my choice between starting with the workstations or the domain controller, is if we can get the domain controller to a stable environment, if we can get the domain controller to something where we're controlling that, and we know that that is the most solid piece of the network, if the workstations, one or two workstations go down, it's not the end of the world. We'll reimage them and bring them back up. So what is the go-to solution for domain controller on Linux? Well, my go-to solution in these cases is RASDC. That's RAZDC. Now, RASDC is an Active Directory domain controller built on CentOS and Samba 4. Now, incidentally, the founder of the project is a guy named Brian. And Brian happens to live in good old Grand Forks, North Dakota. So I reached out to Brian, and about a year and a half ago, I at the time, I was going through all of these hacks, trying to get a domain controller running on Linux. And I came across RASDC, and I reached out to Brian. A few days later, I found myself sitting in Starbucks. I will tell you that neither of us had a MacBook in front of us. We were drinking coffee and talked about Linux to the point that both of us literally had to get back to life. He had to do things with his kids. I had to go pick my kids up from school. Because you see, Brian is one of those guys that is in the shadows because of work and family. But the truth is, he's one of the people that takes the Linux desktop to the next level, because he is taking Linux to a point where I can go on the air and tell you that it's the best operating system out there, full stop. Even when it comes to replacing Windows at things that Windows was invented to do, like be a domain controller. RASDC takes what used to be a total pain and makes it silky smooth. Now, full disclaimer, the project is relatively new. Now, the Samba implementation is totally baked and ready to go for production. So, and I've been using the Samba project, the features of Samba that allow you to use it as an Active Directory controller for a long time. But I get the RASDC basically layers very nice graphical interface and stuff on top of that. I actually have been using RASDC in production for a little over a year now without any issues. So if you have to support a Windows environment and you want to do it on Linux, RASDC is a great place to go. Now, if you are doing like a massive, massive deployment and you're going to have to sit down in meetings and justify everything over and over again and provide a bunch of resources, you might consider looking at just plain old Samba 4, not necessarily with RASDC on top of it, because like I said, I don't know that the project is really billed and advertised as a completed project. I mean, it is completed, but it's in alpha stage. Now, are all of the policy controls, profile redirection, is all of that good stuff going to be included? No. At the end of the day, it's not a Windows server. It's RASDC running on top of Linux. But then again, you won't be restarting your server every month because it's not a Windows server. It's RASDC running on top of Linux. It's definitely a solution that I've used and are definitely worth looking at. And a huge thank you to Brian for taking his talents and his time, which he could have probably sold for a lot of money, and giving them away to the open source community in the way of the RASDC project. Brian also has a lot of other projects that he has going on. He shared a couple of them with me, and I'm not sure if they're eligible to put on the air, but suffice to say that he is a very great guy, and I look forward to getting to know him better in the future. And if you want to learn more about this project or support the project, we'll have a link in the show notes. Again, open phones this hour, 1-855-450-NOAH. That's 1-855-450-6624. We're talking about Linux and what it can do for you on your server and how you can replace your Windows box and Active Directory. Let's go to the phones here. Who do we have here? We have, who do we have? We have John, California. Hi, John. Welcome to the Ask Noah show.
Hi, Noah.
Hi. How can we help?
Okay. So this is a bit of an advanced question. Do you know of a Linux replacement for ChromaCam? It's a background removal software.
Could you elaborate just I think I understand what you're saying. Are you talking about like Chroma Key, basically?
Oh yeah, that's it. Sorry, I think I got the name wrong. But yeah, Chroma Key.
Okay.
Well, no. It's ChromaCam. So essentially, it does automatic background filtering. So you don't need a green screen in the background, but it's able to capture your face.
So it has some sort of algorithm that figures out what your face is and then cuts everything else away.
Yeah, the software is a .NET application called ChromaCam, and I was wondering if you knew of any alternatives on Linux.
Well, here I've never heard of such software, to be honest with you, and that's very impressive because the ability for software to not only detect a face, that's one thing, to say this is the object I'm going to focus on, that's easy enough for a computer to do. But to be able to track that face, to track that movement, and then the parts that are associated, so like my shoulders or whatever with it, and then cut out everything else, that's a very difficult thing for a computer to do. So I'm really impressed that there's software out there that can do it. And no, I don't know of anything that's on Linux that is capable of doing something to that level. That said, green screens are not terribly expensive. I mean, you can buy a simple green screen setup for $30 on Amazon. And then there's more advanced ways to do it where you can actually take like a reflective background and shine a green light on that reflective background. And that will eliminate the need for proper lighting. Because I'll tell you, the real pain in any green screen setup, 100% of the time, is even lighting. Because basically, you need the shade of green to be exact, right? So if you get shadows, the shadow is going to have a slightly darker shade of green than the rest of the screen, and that throws off your whole keying aspect. So the more consistent green you can get, and then the further away from green everything ahead of it can be, the better. So if we can get that green to fall out of focus, some people do that. Other people, if it's a large production place, what they'll do is they actually have paint that goes on the walls that's a specific shade of green, and then they light the green separately, and then just put a key light, a fill light on the talent, and those are usually they're barn doored, closed down, real far. And they try to spill as little light onto the green screen as possible. Is that a workable option for you, or?
Well, just I'm kind of space limited. Also the ChromaCam itself is very convenient. And like subtle things such as some lighting can really throw out the green screen. Whereas in this case, I can just sit down and turn on all the lights. So it's a really a convenience matter.
Oh yeah. Yeah, Rakai in the chat room suggests, have you ever tried running the application in Wine? I assume it's a Windows application.
No, I didn't think it would work. I believe it uses a virtual driver. You select ChromaCam webcam on there, where the webcam also shows up. So I didn't think it would work.
Holy cow! You're telling me this software works off of a webcam?
It works with it works with a webcam.
So you're the image that it's captured, the image that it's doing all this calculation off of, the source image is from like a store-bought webcam.
It's from the Logitech
C920, C930,
922X.
Yeah. Okay, sure. Wow, man, I got to tell you, I'm sorry I don't have a better answer for you other than to just to use a green screen. If you're space limited, if you own the place, obviously you could use the paint. Otherwise, you might look into some of those lighted solutions where you have just a reflective thing, because you can obviously make that very small and then just shine the green light onto it and reflect down. But I got to tell you, that is an impressive piece of software, because the lower the resolution or the less quality the images, the harder it is for the computer to make that calculation. Be interested to see if anyone has any images after that's been processed, after it actually takes the face out. I'd be really interested to see that, because it's interesting that it would be able to do that very well, trying to track the face. I think that's pretty incredible. Gary is calling from Illinois. And Gary, I got to be honest with you, I have a feeling this is going to be 2 for 2. I'm not going to know the answer to this question, but I'm going to take it anyway because I want to hear this. Hi, Gary. How are you?
Awesome. I'm glad to be talking to you.
Yeah, me too. This is an interesting problem you have here. Give me this error now. You're trying to install Linux.
Yeah, I am. I bought a brand new E460 Kaby Lake Lenovo ThinkPad, and of course I want to get rid of Windows off of it. And I've been trying to install a couple of different distros on it. I keep on getting the error of no COM32 file found. Now, I've been researching, and I think I found out half the answer, but I can't figure out the solution yet. And from what I've been reading, it's because it's a Kaby Lake processor. And normally what I've been using to burn a Linux thumb drive has been stuff like UNetbootin or something else along that line. And from what I have read, that UNetbootin or these other type of things put a part of their own boot files on there. And so now I was wondering, I'm kind of new to Linux. I mean, a little bit. I mean, I don't really have a big use for it, even though it's my daily driver. But I don't really do a lot at the command line.
Sure.
But how do I make a bootable thumb drive from my old Linux computer, which actually right now has Ubuntu Mate on there? And I've heard you and Chris talk about the DD command, and I was wondering, is that something I can use?
Yep, sure is.
To make a bootable thumb drive?
Yep, I'll tell you, I'll go over both. So the first is, if you just called me up and you said, how do I put a distro on a drive? If that was your question, my answer to you would be a program called Etcher.io. And Etcher.io, to the best of my knowledge, runs on Windows, runs on Mac, runs on Linux. And the great thing is, it's app image. So for those of you that don't know what that means, it basically means you don't have to worry about having a Debian.deb for your Debian distro or your Ubuntu distro and a .rpm for your Fedora and your CentOS distro. It just, you literally download the file, you double click on the file, and the file runs. It's that simple. It's really incredible. And it was the first time I'd ever used a universal packaging system where I was like, this has really been missing from Linux for a long time, and I know that there are a bazillion people that have a million reasons why they don't want universal packaging, but I'm just telling you, this is really cool. But so, putting that aside, Etcher.io, that's a great way to do it. That's the simplest way to do it. Now, if you want to be a command line ninja, and you're curious of what the command line structure is, the DD command is basically a block writing utility. So basically just, it takes data and stupidly writes it to whatever you tell it to write. It's not paying attention to what it's doing. You following me? So that's both good and bad, because it's good because it means that we can just take an image like an ISO and write it to a USB flash drive. It's bad because it also means that I could potentially be writing that image to my boot drive and I would not know. So you want to be real careful. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to issue a command df. And you could do df tac-h if you wanted to get it in human readable format. But basically what you're doing is you're looking for all of the drives in the system, and you're looking at I usually look at their capacity. So you go down through and you say, okay, dev/SDA, and that's 128 gigs. That's probably my drive. That's probably my SSD, right? And then you look a little further, and you look a little further down. You say, /dev/ SDB is a 4 terabyte drive. Okay, well, that's where I store all my data. Then you look a little further. /dev/SDC. Well, that's an 8 gigabyte drive. Okay, that's probably the flash drive. So the dd command, we'll have the exact syntax for you in the show notes, but it's dd space, and then you're going to specify the input file, what you're going to write to, what you want to write. So if for input file, the equal sign, and then the path to the ISO image that you downloaded. So for me, that would be /home/kernel Linux /download/ ubuntu-16-04.iso or whatever, right? And then you put a space,
Okay.
and then OF, that for output file. So this is where we're going to write the image to, the equal sign, and then /dev/ whatever the letter identifier is that we put it up above. Now, the first common mistake I see with people that are using DD for the first time is they specify a partition number. So if I have, let's take dev/SDC, for example. I might have 3 partitions on that flash drive, and they're going to show up as /dev/SDC1, /dev/SDC2, /dev/SDC3. Those are my 3 partitions for my SDC drive, right? And the number one mistake I see when people don't, when they say, they call me up, they say DD command isn't working, or we have a new tech in the shop, he says, I tried to DD, this didn't work. They're usually specifying the partition number, and you don't want to do that because an ISO image has multiple partitions. Often that it's writing a boot partition, and it's writing the actual thing where the install is, and sometimes you have like a data partition depending on what distro it is. So you don't want to specify a partition number. So the output is going to be OF equals, and then just /dev/ in the example I'm using, SDC, but don't do that blindly, verify. And then the other thing that I'll always do is you can append 2 commands in Linux together. So for example, if I wanted to print a list of files and then I wanted to copy file 1 to file 2, I could write the command ls and then a space and then 2 ampersand. So that's a little and sign, shift 7. And if the shift 7, 2 of those together, ampersands, will execute one command, and then whatever on the other side of the double ampersands will execute the next command. So if I did ls space ampersand space and then cp file 1 file 2, first it would list all the files, then it would, after that command completes, then it will copy file 1 to file 2. No, why are you explaining this to me? Because at the end of my dd commands, I will often put 2 ampersands and then the command sync. And what that does is it flushes all the data out and makes sure that all of it's actually on the drive. Because oftentimes, now you see this especially with Flash Media, you'll issue the command, you'll press enter, and boom, you get your cursor back. You say, how did that thing write 4.6 gigabytes in a half a second? Well, it didn't. It's still working on it. But the command will complete and give you your cursor back, indicating that you could probably rip the thumb drive out, but if you do, your thumb drive doesn't work. So I'll always put 2 ampersands and then the sync command after that. Then once that command completes, once you get your cursor back, now you know that drive is actually written, you can pull it out. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does.
Okay, I'm glad.
Are you going to put some of that in the show notes?
Yeah. I'll have the whole DD command listed for you in the show notes, because that is a complicated thing to try and remember, even say on air. You think that was our trying to remember it. But one other thing too, thank you, chat room. One other thing, block size. BS equals 4 meg. A lot of people will throw that in there. It's not absolutely necessary, but we'll have that again in the show notes. Let's see here. Who do we have here? Jay, Pennsylvania. Hi, welcome to the Ask Noah Show.
Hi.
Hi there. How can we help?
Show.
Hey, thanks for calling.
So I have an Optiplex 790, and it's in UEFI legacy mode.
Okay.
And I'm trying to boot, and I'm trying to boot with the drive connected directly to the motherboard via SATA, as well as via a RAID card that's via PCIe. And when I connect both at the same time, drives on the RAID card as well as drives connected to the SATA on the motherboard, it's a standard Dell system, so I wouldn't expect it to do anything special. However, it doesn't boot. It doesn't get past the BIOS. It's still in the BIOS, and there's a black screen after it tries to boot.
Okay.
However, if I connect either or, it boots.
Okay, so walk me through this because I'm having a little bit of a hard time getting a full picture of what we're doing here. So we've got a SATA drive plugged into the motherboard. Then you have a PCI RAID controller connected to, I assume, another series of drives. Is that correct?
Yeah, 3 or 4 drives, yeah.
Okay, and when you go to boot the machine, it won't post if you have all of this stuff connected at one time.
Well, it loads the BIOS. It gets to that Dell loading screen.
Oh, okay.
F12, whatever. I can press F12. I can do whatever I want. However, after that, just a black screen.
In the BIOS, can you see the drives? Can you see the SATA drive? It might not see the RAID ones, but.
Well, I mean, I can't even get to any setup. So.
Oh, really?
I can't see. Yeah, I can't even get to any setup. It's really weird. I've played with servers, PowerEdge servers before, and I couldn't fit in that, so I set up a little desktop server.
Yeah. You said it was a 790?
Server files. Yeah, 790.
Is it the mini tower or the small form factor?
It's a small form factor.
It is. Here's what I would do. I guess here's what I would do. I would start by doing a BIOS update. There's no reason what you're doing should work. In fact, I have a client that just a month ago we did something very similar. We took one of their old desktops, and it's not their main server, but it's a FreeNAS backup server, and they had a spare RAID card laying around, and so we threw it in there to get the drives done. I mean, these days, honestly, if I'm building a machine from scratch, usually, especially if it's a file server, I'm just putting ZFS on it, but.
Right.
But I did exactly what you're doing, and I don't think it was a 790. I think they were 380s. But it's the same concept. It should work. But I know one of the things when I have weird issues like that where they don't post. Have you tried updating the BIOS?
I have not. I don't think so. I don't think so. I've tried that. So before I was booting from a flash drive, and then I started getting flash drive errors because I was running it for like about 2 years. And I didn't want to run on a flash drive anymore because it kept, because services on the system kept failing. The system didn't power off, but the services kept failing on the system. So I migrated to internal hard drives to solve all the problems, but then I couldn't use up all the ports on my SATA, on my RAID card.
Sure.
So, and then I wanted that native performance of the PCIe without clogging up the motherboard SATA. So I was like,
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Yeah, I would say your next step is to update the BIOS. You'd be amazed. It's funny too. It's interesting that that this becomes so ubiquitous because when I was just a couple weeks ago when I was out for Linux Fest Northwest, we're sitting in the studio and we're just talking about how underrated BIOS updates really are. Like nobody really ever talks about updating the BIOS on their computer or what the mechanism is for getting BIOS updates depending on what manufacturer you have. And at the same time, there's all these really cool projects that, Dell is working with these companies that are, Red Hat, that are developing these systems where they can actually push BIOS updates right through the package manager. So all these really cool innovations are happening around BIOS, and it turns out, updating your BIOS can really fix a lot of problems. And yet, we don't ever really talk about it. And then it's interesting that question would come up. But I would bet you... I'll give you an 80% chance updating your BIOS and the problem just goes away. And if it doesn't, call me back and let me know because I'd really like to work through that and see if we can figure out what's going on. Jay is calling Pennsylvania. Hi, Jay. Welcome to the Ask Noah Show.
Hello, I think I got on.
Oh, I'm sorry. I clicked on the wrong button there. I'm sorry. Blue Zero is calling from the chat room. That's an interesting way to do it. Hi, Blue. Welcome to the Ask Noah Show.
Hey, Noah, I've got a little problems besides, my client wants me to be doing Skype, not Skype, I'm thinking SyncThing, but I'm trying Dropbox, that's where I'm coming from.
Mm-hmm.
How can I set up SyncThing to how can I sync it up where I can get to the clients and mine all together? I cannot think of the steps.
Let me ask you this. Are you absolutely married to SyncThing as a solution, or are you just looking for file synchronization?
File sync would be...
I'll tell you why I'm asking, Blue. I'm asking because a couple of weeks ago on the Ask Noah Show, we talked about C-File and I gave it a pretty good review, I thought anyway. And what I have found since that time, having used it not only now personally, but we rented a server for Altispeed, and we're actually using it company wide now. However good of a review I gave it before, it's twice that good now. As time has gone on, I have come to love C-File even more, and I have had a chance to torture test it even more. I went to the lake, Blue. I was out at the lake, and I had almost no internet. I had like just a meg up and 2 megs down, and I was still able to let C-File do its thing and move files around. So my suggestion to you is take a look at C-File. Yeah, and see if that wouldn't work for you. You said you're coming from Dropbox?
Yeah, I'm trying to go all open source for my company. So I couldn't, for the life of me, could not think of C-File.
Yeah, okay. Well, I tell you what, that's my suggestion to you is take a look at C-File. In fact, I'll do you one better. I'm going to put you back on hold. You stay there. Sarah will pick up and get your particulars from you. And one of the things that we were running a promo a couple of weeks ago where we said that we would, I would assign one of our server technicians to set up C-File for a select number of people. And a couple of people have taken that offer up, and a couple of you guys haven't actually gotten back to us. We've opened a ticket up for you, and we'll address that a little bit later towards the bottom of the hour, because I want to get to our next guest. But if you hang on the line, Sarah will get your particulars, and she will, and we'll get in touch with you, and I'll have one of our technicians set that up for free. You just provide us with a server or a virtual instance from DigitalOcean or something like that, and we will get it set up. Now, this is going to be the first call-in guest we've ever had on the Ask Noah show, and it couldn't be a better one because this is a guy who has really helped the Ask Noah show get started. Michael Tunnell is the owner and operator of VisuX, the visual excellence company that does web design, graphic design. He actually designed and implemented the Ask Noah dashboard, and also all of the graphics that you see on the screen. With the exception of the actual logo itself, all of that and the movement and stuff was all done by Michael Tunnell. Michael's joining us today. Hi, Michael. Welcome to the Ask Noah show.
Hi to you.
Hey, great to have you. So I understand that Michael is a longtime KDE user and actually is a KDE Neon user. And I understand that you guys in the KDE world have been making some big strides lately.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. The Plasma 5.10 release was just last Tuesday. And a lot of cool things have come out. And one of the things I use Neon for is because within like an hour or two of the Plasma 5.10 release, Neon gets the update.
That's fantastic. Tell me a little bit about so for those that don't know, KDE is a desktop environment. Usually it's combined with a base operating system that kind of gives you the distro, so to speak. KDE Neon is kind of an interesting animal because it's the KDE desktop environment paired with the Ubuntu underpinnings, but it's not full on Ubuntu. It's just kind of the Ubuntu base. Do I kind of have that right?
Yeah, technically it's not even really a distro. They decided to not call it a distro because they don't handle anything to do with Ubuntu's core. So essentially Neon is Ubuntu as it is with Plasma and the KDE stack on top of it. So the Neon team only handles all the KDE stuff, so there's a bunch of KDE applications like Kdenlive and things like that get updated, and they're handled by the Neon team. But all the updates, like security features and things like that, is controlled by Canonical and Ubuntu.
So tell me some of the new things that have come out in KDE.
Well, one of the coolest things so far is I think it's really cool, is you can customize your boot screen. And it's kind of like people might be thinking, why would you want to do that? And it's just a nice polish that you can do, so when someone sees your computer, even when you're booting up, it's customized to however you want it to be, not just wallpaper, but even your boot screen.
That seems
and there's some cool.
No, go ahead.
Okay, I was just saying there's also some cool stuff that are more user workflow specific. Like there's this new thing called spring loading, which allows you to just move files over like a folder on your desktop, and a temporary window will pop up, and you just drop files there, and that way you can move files into a folder or into multiple subfolders without ever opening your file manager directly from the desktop.
That's absolutely that's awesome. The KDE desktop is something that has intrigued me, and it's been more on my radar lately because I have been using GNOME more and finding some of the pain points in GNOME. And so actually just last week I was talking to Rikai and Chris, and they were saying, no, you should really give KDE a shot. And when I started to think about what I would do, the main reason I was on Entergos was because it had, it was just a really easy, simple way for me to get stock GNOME and then play with it. But I think if I was going to look at a KDE distro, I'd probably look at something, exactly like what KDE Neon is doing. And do you think that would be a good choice for somebody like me who just wants to basically get work done?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, KDE Neon and Kubuntu have their both pros and cons. If you are a new user to Linux in general, and you want to have applications that are set for you and things that are set up for you in a more, easy to jump in way, then that's Kubuntu. KDE Neon is for people who want to have a minimal install and then customize it from there. So, like with Neon, you get an image viewer, a browser, the KDE stack of system settings and stuff like that. But that's pretty much it. You don't get an Office suite or any kind of thing like any custom like media players. You do get VLC, but it's not the best in my opinion. But that doesn't matter. So I would say KDE Neon is something that for you would be perfect, but it's not best for everyone. So I just wanted to clarify that some people Kubuntu is good for them, and for me personally, I think Neon is the most interesting and has the most potential for anyone who's looking in for Plasma and has at least a little bit of experience with Linux.
Now, early on, when Canonical announced that Ubuntu was going to fall away from Unity and go to GNOME, you actually made a very compelling argument that they should have gone to KDE, and we were going to have you on the program to talk about it that week, and then we had an issue with our phone system. Would you care to talk about that now?
Absolutely. So technically what I said was not really that they should go to Plasma. I was wanting them to not abandon Unity because I like the Unity workflow and I like the innovations that they did with the HUD and all of the screen real estate saving stuff they did. And a lot of the ideas that were made in Unity were actually created in Plasma by the community because they did a lot of cool things that the Plasma community was like, well, we want to continue that on our platform. And it's a good opportunity, I thought, for Canonical to, instead of abandoning Unity, they could take the Plasma platform and create a Unity-like environment based on a foundation of Plasma.
Okay, well that kind of makes sense. I guess I misrepresented you on the program then the first time, but that makes a lot of sense. Well, that's great. I'm glad to see that the KDE.
Well,
go ahead.
To be fair, I did actually name my video with clickbait, so it didn't actually specify that in the title.
Yeah, it's got you 41,000 views, so it seems like you did something right.
It's now at 70,000.
Oh my goodness!
But but the idea was more. If you just if Canonical jumped onto Unity on Plasma, they could do some amazing things with it. Plasma by itself is not necessarily perfect for everyone, and I wouldn't say that Unity on Plasma would be either. But it could go so much farther because the few things that people disliked about Unity was the lack of customization.
Sure.
If you have Unity on top of Plasma, you can do anything you want. And personally, I'd probably even use Unity if it was built on Plasma.
Yeah,
it's just the limitation of how much I can control is what stopped me from using it in the first place.
Yeah, and the thing is, what's always kept me off of KDE in the past was there was always something else that I liked better, and slowly but surely, there are changes being made that are dwindling that away. And I played with KDE Neon just a little bit, and I've been really stoked about it. And we'll see what happens. Now is not the best time for me to be making a distro change, but definitely in the next few weeks, I might have to take another look at it. Michael,
Entergos does have a KDE version.
Yeah, I know. The thing is, I have a lot of issues with Entergos, though. I have had, well, I guess that's not necessarily true. I have issues that I attribute to Entergos, but I guess a lot of them are probably GNOME specific. Maybe I should give KDE on Antergos a try.
Yeah, and just to be pointed out, I really do like the GNOME workflow, and I don't necessarily like the Plasma default workflow. So while I am a huge proponent of Plasma, and I've been using it for years, it does work like GNOME in my setup.
Sure.
I call it GNOME.
GNOME. That's great. Michael, thanks so much for joining us. I know that the video that we were referring to earlier, it's a video produced by your channel, Tux Digital, and you've got another one coming out talking more about the changes in KDE. Where can people find that?
You can just go to tuxdigital.com, and that's it.
Outstanding. Hey, Michael, I got a question for you. This is something I came up with at the top of my head, but it's live radio, and two, it's my show, so I can do it. I got another caller lined up here in the queue that's going to ask a question, and I'm pretty sure you and I are going to land on the exact same answer. You want to hang around and answer it with me?
Absolutely, sure.
Cool. Chris is calling from North Carolina. Hi, Chris. How are you?
Hi, Noah.
Hi.
I'm doing great.
Great. Thanks for calling the Ask Noah Show. Your question for Michael and me.
Is there a open source invoicing software that you would recommend for small business owners?
Michael?
Absolutely. Invoice Ninja.
You want to talk about it a little bit? Or?
Okay.
Yeah, Invoice Ninja is fantastic. They can go to invoiceninja.com or invoiceninja.org. The .com is their premium hosted version, which is like $10 a month or something. And they have the .org is the open source version where you can host it wherever you want. There is one small caveat which I consider irrelevant in general, because if you're talking about an invoicing software, you're going to be expecting to get money in. So I think their premium tiny little thing they have is fine. So what they do is they have a white label version for $20 per year, and that's it. You pay $20 a year, and they give you the full open source version with complete white labeling, and there's no reference of Invoice Ninja to your clients. So the best thing about Invoice Ninja is, one, it's open source, but two, it has invoicing, expenses, task management, not the most extensive project management tools, but it's got time tracking in your tasks, so you can set up each individual client has a task you want to complete. You can track it by the time that you want. And it has integration with your bank accounts. It can import the expenses you do, as far as like your business bank account has, we spent this particular thing for this expense, and then it will just import it into the Invoice Ninja automatically. I could talk for a very long time about how good this is.
Yeah, and the reason I kept Michael on for the call was a couple of months ago, full disclaimer, we have been using Beansbooks, which is an open source accounting software by, actually, I don't know if it's open source, but the code is available on GitHub. I'm not exactly sure what the license is, but it's put up by System 76, and we've been very happy with it. It works very, very well, and I've been recommending it to people as long as I've been using it. Well, a couple of months ago, I had recommended it to a gentleman, and he contacted System 76, and they said, well, we're not exactly accepting taking on new hosted people. The code is there. If you want to use it, that's fine. And, we know Noah, and he's been around, so we keep his stuff active, but we're not exactly, taking new people. And so since then, Michael and I had talked about this, and I said, if they ever shut the thing down, I have to have something to go to. What should I look at? And Michael had recommended Invoice Ninja to me, and I had looked at it, and it has glowing review from me. I think it's a fantastic piece of software. I think it's absolutely outstanding. I think that Michael is better suited to actually talk about what it can do and what it can't do, because he's actually using it, and I just plan to use it someday, if that makes any sense. Does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you, guys.
Perfect. Well, thanks a lot for calling in, and thank you very much, Michael, for joining us on the air, as well as answering a question. That's, like I said, it's one of those things that it just kind of came up with that off the top of my head. I was like, just keep him around, and the technical gods are with me. It worked out. Val is calling from Texas. Hi, Val. Welcome to the Ask Noah Show.
Hey, Noah. Thanks for taking my call.
Thanks for calling in. How can we help today?
Yeah, so long story short, I'm a network admin for a power utility company where I live, and we're actually decommissioning our last HP UX boxes this week.
Wow.
And it actually got me thinking about the future of commercial Unix. You don't hear a lot about AIX, HP UX, and then Solaris 12 is pretty much a dead product for from the announcement from Oracle a few months back. So I just wanted to get your opinion on what you think about the future of commercial Unix. It seems like Linux is kind of just taking over that job in the data center.
Yeah, it is. You've got a lot of market forces working against commercial Unix. So first of all, you have the fact that the GPL and the very nature of Linux allows people to, a lot more freedom. So there's a lot more innovation happening on Linux than there is on commercial Unix. When's the last time you've heard of some revolutionary new feature coming out on commercial Unix? It rarely happens. In fact, even not to pick on the BSD guys, but a large majority of their innovation is built upon our innovation, and they just, Linux is where it's happening, and so you have that market constraint. Then you have the market constraint from the opportunity of training. I live in Grand Forks, North Dakota, town of 50,000 people. There's barely, enough population here to justify chain restaurants, and yet we have Linux training places. You can go get Linux trained around here. You can't really get trained on Unix. So you get a lot of guys that are going to school for this stuff, that are learning about this stuff, and there's, they go in, they say, I can get some education, I can get some training on this given operating system. Now I'm going to go out into the job, and this is where I have skills and marketable. And of course, the more people you have that are in that market that can administrate a thing, that can troubleshoot a thing, the cheaper you can buy their labor, because there's more of them, right? And so then you start looking at it from a cost perspective, and you say, well, commercial Unix, there's 5 guys in the whole country that, I'm making that up, but limited amount of people that can administrate this thing over here, and we got 10 applications a minute coming in to administrate that thing over there. Where are we going to build our stuff, So you have that kind of market constraint working against you, and then you have a lot of really cool projects and companies that are funding things built upon Linux, like Docker and like libvirtd and even Cfile to a far lesser extent. But a lot of these things are happening, and they're happening on Linux, and they're not happening on commercial Unix. So does that answer your question? I guess to TLDR it, I think it's going to die. I think like most legacy stuff, it's going to take a long time to die.
Yeah, I agree. I was just wondering how many years you think it's got before it's just completely gone.
Oh, a while. A long while. The thing is, I still have, we worked on, God, where was that? It was I can't say where it was. We worked on a place. We'll call it The Place. We worked on a place, and they had Windows NT infrastructure still in place. This is, 20, 25-year-old, equipment, and they still had it in production. So, I mean, it's going to take a while before it dies. All right, so let's go back. I just want to finish up here our conversation about Windows Active Directory. So you've converted all of your Active Directory controllers to Linux, and now you're going to convert all the workstations to Linux. So we have total Linux solution from top to bottom, but it doesn't really make a ton of sense to use imitated Windows solutions when we're all Linux, does it? So what do? Enter the FreeIPA. FreeIPA is an integrated security information management solution that combines Linux 389 directory services, MIT, Kerberos, NTB, DNS, Dogtag system, and SSSD. So what does all that gibberish mean? Well, it means that in English, it's the equivalent of Active Directory on Linux. Now, FreeIPA just takes a few minutes to get set up. And of course, if you host it yourself locally, then you could host it on a VPS of your choice. If, however, you just want to see what the thing looks like, you will just want to get the feel of FreeIPA, then they actually offer a demo with the web application, and you can do web application with LDAP, or you can use Kerberos authentication. Now, obviously, because it's running on the cloud, there may be a performance hit, so they also have a free public instance of the FreeIPA server. Obviously, the demo server is blown away at the end of every day, so don't, use it for your production server or anything like that. But once you have the server set up, installing the client it's like one command. It's like yum space install space free IPA dash client, and then I always put attack Y so it doesn't ask me questions, because who likes questions? And then you can use IPA dash client dash install and specify the domain, the username, and the password, and it's done. Now that client is enrolled. Unsurprisingly, the folks at the FreeIPA are smart folks. And so SE Linux has integration, user roles are integrated as well certificates, sudo, automount, etc. The FreeIPA folks also offer Docker images. So if you just want to download and get to work rather than spend your day configuring a box, that's an option from you. Now, from a business perspective, the ideal target for FreeIPA is typically a large organization that is running some purpose-built specific software, such as like scientific calculation software, or engineering software, etc. Your typical small business is using web-based software stuff, and that is going to have its own authentication mechanism most of the time. So workstation security isn't necessarily an issue. It's a web browser conduit with a built-in Office suite. That's kind of what you think, and a file browser. That's kind of what you think of these workstations a lot of the time. If you want more information about it, we'll have links for FreeIPA as well as RASDC in the show notes. And again, open phone lines 1-855-450-NOAH. That's 1-855-450-6624. Give me a call. We'll answer your tech questions or business in tech questions. Let's go back to the phones here. Who do we have? We have Simon, Virginia. Simon, Wisconsin. Hi, Simon. Welcome to the Ask Noah Show.
Hey, Noah. How are you?
Hey, pretty good. How can we help today?
So I wanted to ask you, so for a long time, the only machines I've had my hands on are machines with a BIOS. But I recently got my hands on a UEFI machine at Linux Fest Northwest.
Mm-hmm.
But I had to get some help to install a Linux distro on it. So I wanted to ask you, for the future, what do you have to keep in mind when installing Linux distros on UEFI machines versus installing them on BIOS machines?
Not much. So the first thing I do, and this is going to get me a lot of hate mail, and I don't care. I'm going to say it anyway. The first thing I do is I shut off Secure Boot because it's a pain, and I really think it was invented to solve a problem that never existed to begin with. So I shut Secure Boot off. Then with UEFI, as long as your distro supports UEFI, 99% of the time, Ubuntu is a great example, right? So let's use Lubuntu as an example, just because. We plug Lubuntu in on a thumb drive. We plug it in. We turn the machine on, and if it's a Dell, we press F12 and look at the boot menu, and you're going to see two options. And the first option is going to say legacy boot options, and it's going to give all of the available drives that have a legacy boot option in them. The second list of options will say UEFI boot options, and it'll give you the list of options that are available with UEFI. Now, in a distro like Lubuntu or Kubuntu or Ubuntu proper, whatever, they all have both UEFI and BIOS right there in the same image. So when you plug the drive in, you're going to see both of those options pop up, and you just choose the one you want. Here's why I would always choose UEFI over BIOS boot if you have the option. It is way faster. And I don't mean like way faster as in like a couple of seconds. I mean as in like a minute and a half boot time versus like 5 seconds boot time. I mean, it's like insanely faster. It doesn't always matter because, if you use your laptop like I do, I boot the thing up, I use it. When I'm done with it, I just close the lid, open it back up. It just goes in and out of standby. I think since I've gotten my ThinkPad a month ago, maybe I've rebooted it 3 times, maybe, and that's probably being generous. For the most part, it comes in and out of standby. So was there something more specific that you were looking for, or is it just kind of general recommendation kind of a thing?
Well, it's just sort of a general thing. To kind of go back to what you said with faster boot up times, the laptop that I got at Linux Fest Northwest, the only working hard drive in there right now is, a hard drive.
Yeah.
Does it still make a difference if you're booting with UEFI? I mean, does that really, like I said, does it make a difference?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. You're saying as opposed to an SSD?
Yeah.
I probably would still... Here's why I would still do UEFI. I would still do UEFI because everyone that is moving forward on the assumption that there are going to be more and more UEFI users and less BIOS users. In fact, to that end, there are some computers you can buy that don't even have a legacy BIOS boot option anymore. So if you're not using a distro that supports UEFI, you'd just be host. So from that perspective, I would still stick with UEFI simply because that's where the innovation is going to be. But you're right. If you're on a spinning disk, especially if it's a slow spinning disk, it's probably a 30 to 45 second boot time anyway. So you're probably not gaining a whole lot. Does that answer your question?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot for calling in. We really appreciate having you. Chris is calling for Florida. Chris, welcome to the Ask Noah Show.
Noah, nice to talk to you.
Pleasure to speak with you. How can we help?
Yeah, I had a question about running an Asterisk Now server. Specifically, what do you do as far as maintaining and keeping it up to date? Like, how often do you update it? What do you do to update it, etc.?
Sure. The maintenance schedule that we have on ours here at Altispeed is once a month. Once a month we log into it and we update it. When I say update the server, for those of you who don't know, Asterix Now is a appliance-like distro that's built on top of CentOS to run Asterix. And inside of the web utility, if you go under admin and then system admin, and little side note, as of the latest version of Asterix, it requires you to register for an account. It's free. It doesn't cost you anything. But you have to register for an account to get access to the system administration tool. And you want to do that because it's a very useful tool. It doesn't cost anything, but you just need to register for an account. Okay, back to what I was talking about. So you click on admin, click on system admin, and then, I'm sorry, I think it's admin, then it's packages. I have to look. I think it's admin, system admin, then packages, something like that. But I'll have an exact description of how to get to it in the show notes. But once you get there, there is a check online, which will go out to the internet and see what updates are available. And then it's weird how it works, because first you check online, it tells you all the packages that are available. Then you have to download, you just click the download button, and then you have to press process. And it downloads all the packages, and then you can click update and press process, and then it processes all the packages. And I have had it work a couple of times where I click the download, I click download, then I click update, and then I click process, and it does them all. But oftentimes I have something fail. And if anything ever does fail to update, if you read the error carefully, it usually will just tell you XYZ failed, execute, and then it gives you the command, and it'll say execute this from the command line. And then basically what you do is you log into your server with SSH, or, you know, if you have it running on a machine, you can walk up to it. And basically you run the manual command. And so sometimes I'll have a package, it'll fail to update a package, and it'll say, you know, the automatic update script failed, X didn't update, so run yum update, and then this to get it to go. I said I update our server once a month. That's the scheduled maintenance. Anytime I log into the server, if there's an update available, we apply it. So if we're creating an extension, or if we're modifying a voice mailbox, or resetting a password, whatever it is, anytime we're in the box, we're updating it. So it actually gets updated more often than that. It's just that's the plan. Does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah, it does. So do you never just do a yum update? Do you have to use the web UI, or can you do it from the command line?
You can update the packages from the server. That's not a bad idea either. I don't know. I guess I don't know exactly how often we go into the server itself and update the server. Because usually if I'm doing something, I'm bouncing in there to create something, and then I bounce over to that update thing and I update the packages within Asterix Now. I pay people to actually keep the server up to date. So I don't know exactly how often I assume it happens once a month as well. And yes, we do run yum update on the server itself. But my understanding is, and I could be wrong about this, my understanding is that the update manager inside of Asterix Now updates the packages on the box. So my understanding is, and again, I could be wrong about this, my understanding is that either way, you are updating all of the stuff except for the OS-specific parts. But then again, the OS-specific parts are pared down to just support that appliance. There's no extra stuff installed. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Great. Well, thanks a lot for calling in. We really appreciate it. That brings us to the end of the show. Special thanks to Rakai, our video editor, Sarah, our call screener, and Ben, our producer. We'll see you back next week.